The release of version 3.0 introduced new ways for more recent units to obtain buffing capabilities through the off-tune system, and one of those ways was the acquisition of damage bonuses with Tune Strain Interfere stacks depending on the amount of tune break boost that the on-field character had. But this buff was very underwhelming due to the inconsistencies with stacking Tune Strain Interfered and the limited access to tune break boost to Lene. Denia fixes most of these issues, and she also helps Fusion Burst Imeth do some serious damage due to her Fusion Burst damage amplification buffs as well as crowd control capabilities. In today's video, I'm going to break down Denia's kit to make it very easy to understand how she works, best builds, how much of a damage decrease you should expect in her non-best in slot teams to help you decide if you should pull or not. Keep in mind that every footage used in this video was captured on the creator server, so some things may be subject to change upon official release. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Denia's playstyle. Denia has two modes. Let's call this mode light mode and let's call this one dark mode for the sake of simplicity. In the light mode, if you look down here, we have two types of stacks that she can regenerate. Let's call the top one orange stacks and let's call the ones at the bottom pink stacks. She'll regenerate some orange stacks and 2 pink stacks automatically as soon as she engages in combat or as soon as she meets an enemy. Her normal attacks will regenerate some orange stacks, and the skill in light mode can also regenerate some orange stacks as well. In endgame, where speed is all that matters, you'll have to cast her intro skill, which gives her some orange stacks and full pink stacks, and then press basic attack right after the intro, and then finally press her skill button to fully regenerate her orange stacks. Now all you have to do is cast her liberation to transition into dark mode Denia or the ultimate form. In this mode, she gets an enhanced skill as long as she has at least one of the pink stacks that we regenerated earlier. So the first thing to do is to cast the enhanced skill 2 times, which will consume all the pink stacks that she has available, and the second enhanced skill will get buffed by 150% increased damage multiplier per pink stacks that was consumed. The orange stacks that we regenerated earlier will turn purple in the dark mode or the ultimate form, and they will be consumed to buff her basic attacks. So after casting the 2 enhanced skills, all you need to do is spam her basic attacks until the default skill in the ultimate state comes off cooldown, because it shares the same cooldown with the enhanced skill. So use the normal skill when it becomes available, and the final ultimate should also become available now. Now cast the final ultimate and her concerto energy should be full, so you can intro to another character. The final ultimate will leave this tacit mark on the ground that'll do damage over time, apply tune strain shifting, or fusion burst from off-field depending on the resonance mode that you selected on her skill screen, and keep in mind that the tacit mark that she leaves on the ground will also pull in nearby enemies as a form of crowd control, so it really helps Imeth and Luke since they don't have any crowd control capabilities. And that's pretty much how you play Denia. Team building. As I mentioned earlier, Denia has 2 resonance modes, just like Lene, including Tune Strain and Fusion Burst. Hence, the DPS units that she synergizes with includes Luke and Imeth. So I ran a test in End State Matrix and recorded the points for the best run for every viable team composition for Luke and Imeth. Let's start with the Luke team composition, and keep in mind that Denia is heavily dependent on Monnier for off-tune build-up rate to provide 40 tune break boost to the entire team because of this passive, and the points rewarded in End State Matrix during my testing is directly equivalent to the damage dealt by the whole team, not just the DPS. So this is an assessment of the entire team's performance. Coming at first place is obviously Monnier, Denia, and Luke team composition, which every team was compared to with a damage loss of 0%. Coming at second place is Monnier, Lene, and Luke with a damage loss of 3.1%. So the Lene team actually came in pretty close due to Lene's high damage output. Third place was Showkeeper, Lene, and Luke with a damage loss of 6.3%. Fourth place was Showkeeper, Denia, and Luke with a damage loss of 19%, which is pretty significant, and the reason is due to Denia's low damage output compared to Lene, even though Denia's buffs were significantly higher, which is why overall damage by the whole team matters a lot. Fifth place goes to Monnier, Sanhua, and Luke. And finally, 6th place goes to Showkeeper, Sanhua, and Luke. For the Imeth team composition, all the teams that I tested was compared to the Chisa, Denia, and Imeth Fusion Burst team composition, which is actually the best in slot Fusion Burst team for Imeth at the moment. Coming at first place is Monnier, Lene, and Imeth Tune Rupture team composition with a damage increase of 6.5%, meaning that the best in slot Tune Rupture team comp is actually much more powerful than the best in slot Fusion Burst team for Imeth. And after multiple retries, I came to a conclusion that the Tune Rupture team heavily benefited from Lene's high personal damage and the Tune Rupture damage after Tune Break. Second place goes to the best in slot Fusion Burst team, including Chisa, Denia, and Imeth team composition with a damage loss of 0% since that's the team which every other team was compared to. Third place goes to Monnier, Denia, and Imeth Fusion Burst team with a damage loss of 14%. Fourth place goes to Monnier, Lupa, and Imeth Tune Rupture team composition with a damage loss of 14.6%. Fifth place goes to Shorekeeper, Denia, and Imeth Fusion Burst team with a damage loss of 17%. Finally, sixth place goes to Chisa, Lupa, and Imeth Fusion Burst team composition with a damage loss of 23%. So the takeaway here is that Fusion Burst Imeth really needs her Denia, but if you have the best in slot Tune Rupture team, you really don't have to get Denia for Imeth unless most DPS needs Lene on your account, like Hiyuki for example. Now let's cover her build. The only alternative weapon option that I would recommend if you can't get her signature weapon is String Master, because Denia's skills deal resonant skill damage with the exception of the second enhanced skill that consumes all the pink stacks in her ultimate form. This means that it's very easy to always refresh the attack buff from the second passive of String Master. Her personal damage will suffer a loss of 6.7% when you're using String Master, which is not a lot. She doesn't do damage to begin with, so don't stress about which weapon to use. For those that might not have any limited weapons on your account, you can use Cosmic Ripples. She'll suffer a damage loss of 27% if you're using Cosmic Ripples. Again, don't let this 27% damage loss scare you to pull for her weapon, because her damage potential is not that great per my testing. Just slap any limited rectifier that you have on her and you should be fine as a sub DPS. Only get the weapon if you plan to main her, or you're pulling mainly because of the buff that it provides to other teammates. For those that are planning to get the signature due to the attack buff that it grants to all her teammates, I run some tests with Luke and I encountered a damage loss of about 7.6% when using other rectifiers like String Master. This result may be a bit low or a bit high based on how much attack you have on your Imeth or Luke. My Luke didn't have that much attack percentage substats on his echoes, which was intentional so that the 24% attack buff doesn't encounter any diminishing returns. So the results that I have here is pretty accurate. For her echoes, I tested the amount of buffs that the Reel of Splice Memories, Moonlit Clouds, and Pact of Neon Light can grant to Luke. All the damage results were compared to what I got for Moonlit as a baseline. Reel of Splice Memories encountered a damage loss of 1.5%. The reason is that the 20 Tune Break boost that it grants to all her teammates only grants a 2.4% damage bonus per Tune Strain Interfered stack. So with 3 Tune Strain Interfered stacks on the enemy, you're only getting 7.2% damage bonus, which is less superior to attack buffs and damage boost that the other sets can provide. Some might argue that you can stack more than 3 stacks of Tune Strain Interfered on the target, but I used 3 to do my test since Luke can only apply 3 stacks on a new enemy after the previous one dies at S0 due to this passive that he has, so you'll typically reach 4 to 5 stacks maximum in endgame. The time it takes to reach maximum stacks also makes your damage inconsistent. From these two images, you can see that we're facing the same enemy with 2 stacks of Tune Strain Interfered, and the glare damage from Luke with the Reel of Splice Memory set actually suffered a damage loss of about 3% compared to Moonlit, but Reel of Splice Memories will try to keep up as she keeps stacking up Tune Strain Interfered. So you'll be losing quite a lot of damage at the beginning of the fight, and the enemy will be even dead by the time that you reach maximum stacks of 4 to 5, which also limits how much you can apply on a new enemy to 3 as I mentioned earlier due to Luke's passive. Some might also argue that it buffs Denia's damage as well since she also has this Tune Strain passive, but per my testing, her damage potential is quite underwhelming at S0R1. Pact of Neon Light actually increased Luke's damage output by 1.7% since it provides more attack buff than Moonlit, but I highly recommend Moonlit because it reduces Denia's energy regen requirement, which helps you save resources that you might use to hyper optimize your echoes for energy regen and double crit. Make sure to use Chromatic Foam if you're going to be playing Fusion Burst Imeth. Whichever set you do decide to go for, run crit rate or crit damage focus depending on the substat that you have on your weapon. So if it's crit rate, go for crit damage and vice versa so that you can get a well-balanced crit ratio. 3 cost should be double fusion damage bonus and 1 cost should be attack percentage. Substats priority should be crit rate, crit damage, and energy regen. You can also prioritize liberation damage bonus, but I wouldn't really recommend you to go that far because as I mentioned earlier, her damage potential is quite low at S0R1. Talent priority should be liberation, skill, normal attacks, forte circuit, and intro skill. Rotations. The Luke team composition is pretty straightforward if you've watched his guide video on my channel. And Denia's outro skill lasts for 16 seconds, so you don't have to worry about losing the outro buff before Luke uses his final ultimate. So I'll be covering the Imeth Fusion Burst rotation since that one has more room for improvement with a little bit of animation cancelling to speed up your rotations. This is the build that I'll be using on all teammates. You first start by doing basic attacks with Imeth, and when the last stage is completed, press her skill and swap out of the animation to Chisa. Use Chisa's skill and basic attack until the scissors animation begins. Swap to Imeth and basic attack up to stage 3, where the mech flies away from the enemy. Swap out of the animation to Chisa to complete her basic attacks, which will now generate enough stacks for her to transition into chainsaw mode. Cast her liberation skill and hold your basic attack button until she slams her chainsaw on the ground, and intro to Denia. Basic attack right after the intro skill to pop the bubble, skill, and cast her ultimate. Press her skill 2 times and basic attack until the last stage where she slams her claws on the ground is completed. Her skill should be off cooldown right after, so cast it to get access to her final ultimate. Use her final ultimate, echo skill, and intro to Imeth. Basic attack until the final stage in the mech form is completed to get some extra stacks, and cast her liberation. Use her skill right after to cause a fusion burst explosion. Basic attack to the 3rd stage and use her skill again to cause a second explosion. Heavy attack and cast her final ultimate. Now just rinse and repeat. Sequence explanations. As always, S1 is highly recommended because Denia doesn't have any inbuilt anti-interruption, so get S1 mainly because of the anti-interruption. But if you're good at dodging, you won't really need it. S2 is really good because it provides 50% fusion damage bonus to Imeth or anyone in her team that can apply Fusion Burst. And it allows Denia to ignore up to 10% of the target's fusion resistance. In Tune Strain teams, Denia provides 20 Tune Break boost to the entire team and allows you to Tune Break the enemy right after an intro skill in the first rotation, even if you don't have Monnier to provide off-tune build-up rate. This can happen once every 5 minutes, so it's nothing crazy. The damage multiplier of the second enhanced skill that consumes all the pink stacks is also increased by 40%. Stop at S2 if you want to buff her teammate and slightly increase Denia's damage potential. S3 turns Denia into a full DPS. The final ultimate gets an 80% increased damage multiplier, and she can now hold up to 5 pink stacks instead of 3. She now gets all the 5 pink stacks right after an intro skill, and pressing basic attack right after to pop the bubble will consume all the dark cores and nuke the enemy with an increased damage multiplier of 1200%, which is absolutely crazy, so you can basically nuke the enemy after an intro skill. This changes her playstyle quite a lot as a main DPS. She can now obtain 1 pink stack every 6 seconds when she's in her ultimate form or the dark mode Denia form, so you can on-field her a little bit after casting her ultimate to use more enhanced skills after 6 seconds whenever a pink stacks is refreshed. Let me know if you would like me to make a dedicated video for her S3. S4 lets her ground tastic mark that she puts on the ground after the final ultimate do damage every 3 seconds instead of 4 seconds. It might look underwhelming on the surface because the damage over time was only reduced by 1 second. However, this can help Imeth do more fusion burst damage since the ground tastic mark applies fusion burst with every hit. S5 increases the damage multiplier of the first liberation to 100%. It's nothing crazy since the base multiplier is pretty low to begin with. S6 grants her 60% attack and 60% damage bonus without any restrictions. In the fusion burst mode, whenever the ground tastic mark does damage to enemies, which is every 3 seconds because of S4, it'll trigger a fusion burst explosion with an increased multiplier of 200%. So you don't need to stack fusion burst before they cause the explosion. The fusion burst stacks does not disappear like they usually do when you're playing Imeth, but every target can take damage once from this attack, and when you cast the final ultimate again in the subsequent rotations, it'll reset it and the same enemy can take the fusion burst damage with a 200% increased damage multiplier again. It's pretty underwhelming for an S6 buff, but I guess it's mostly made to support fusion burst DPS units. In the Tuned Strain mode, whenever her teammates or herself tune breaks, they can now inflict an additional Tuned Strain interfered. This is really good because it links up really well with the 20 Tuned Break boost from S2, and that's when it really pays off to run sets like the Reel of Splice Memories to give you more Tuned Break boost because it solves the damage inconsistency issue with Tuned Strain damage dealers, since they have to gradually stack Tuned Strain interfered one after the other with every Tuned Break, which makes you do less damage in the first rotation in particular because of how the Tuned Strain buff was designed. But with that said, S3 should be your stopping point if you want to get the best sequence for Denia without spending more than you have to. That'll be all for my Denia character breakdown. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to support the channel because it's free and you can always change your mind. Our Discord link will be in the pinned comment if you're having any issues with the game or you just want a place to chill or hang out. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.